it looks like they're pretending they're in Iraq they're fighting a military, and instead they're actually busting down doors, dressed up like they're in Iraq, but they're actually in Chicago. So there was a major raid in Chicago. Over 300 ICE agents stormed a building overnight with some now this happened last week, right? What day was this?
This is October 1st.
October 1st, right? So this is last Wednesday. So 30 criminal illegal aliens were arrested, including members of the Tren de Agua, a designated terrorist organization. Okay, none of that means anything. So all of a sudden you hear about Tren de Agua. It's all you. None of that. They can call anybody a terrorist they want. That's all. Okay, so don't. They called Amy Goodman a terrorist when she was protesting a pipeline. Don't. They called Jill Stein a terrorist. They'll call anybody a terrorist. They were all sheltered under Governor J.B. Pritzker's watch. This crackdown just sent shockwaves to Chicago. So here it is from the AP. They used helicopters and chemical agents. Immigration agents become increasingly aggressive in Chicago. Why would you be dressed like that? Why would you be dressed like you need camouflage on a concrete street?
Well, what's happening, Jimmy, is there is a concern of many of these ICE agents being doxxed, but already their actions have further antagonized and intensified reactions from many of the protesters and activist groups in Chicago and in greater Illinois. But already the fact that they have been moving around carte blanche with no real pushback from Mayor Brandon Johnson or Governor J.B. Pritzker. The situation on the ground here in the city in Illinois is that the politicians, as much as they want to declare lawfare, they really don't have anything to really oppose ICE, including when the CPD superintendent says, yeah, we're not going to intervene with the FBI or ICE or any other federal agents. So hands are tied, and this is just going to be a powder keg that's just going to continue to be at risk of exploding in the streets.
I have a question. Remember,
go ahead.
Remember when we were playing the footage of all the black Chicagoans angry at that mayor for putting a bunch of undocumented immigrants?
I got those.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. Is that why is that why? Because they had all that pressure from their own constituents over it?
Okay, so here's the thing. The raid that happened, and it wasn't Apache helicopters, they were Blackhawk helicopters that took place for that raid. Activist, organizer, mayoral candidate Jamal Green, who I've had on the show a few times, did a 3-minute video breaking down about why this raid took place. When the when the sanctuary city was finally proposed, or Chicago to be a sanctuary city, the problem is, these are feel-good points, as I've spoken before on my show. The trouble was the politicians put all the migrants, especially when governors of Florida and Texas sent all the migrants to sanctuary cities, including Chicago, into the south and west side neighborhoods of Chicago, a already hyper-segregated city, and especially in two areas that are economically struggling.
So they sent these immigrants into black neighborhoods that are economically struggling.
Yep.
And of course there was pushback. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was because they deemed Chicago a sanctuary city without any plan on how to pay for it.
There was never a plan, Jimmy. We asked that question, myself and Daniel, way back in 2018 when the conversation was initially getting started, and we got 3 answers. Oh, yes, we do have a plan. 2, we were called racist or bigoted, that we didn't understand just how things were being played out and we should just shut up. Or number 3, my personal favorite, they just turned their backs on us and walked away. So when we asked the activists and organizers and politicians and people who were running for office, hey, can we do this? It wasn't asked out of malice. Can the city survive this? No one really had an answer. There was no plan, and now we're $1.1 billion in the hole, Jimmy. That's how bad Chicago is.
Sounds like that's the plan. Sounds like it was the plan.
Yeah. So, and now they're using helicopters and guys coming down from helicopters, from Blackhawk helicopters on ropes into people's houses and apartments. And I mean, you can't give those guys all that cool equipment without them coming up with excuses to use it. That's what this is. I mean, it's a good thing we didn't give them Star Wars swords, or else they'd be lopping off hands holding cell phone cameras. Right? I mean, you give them that stuff that they're going to use it. And then here it is. They're using helicopters and chemical agents. Yep. And chemical agent, I had one of those in the 90s because he was completely toxic. I'll tell you that. But anyway, that's another story. Storming an apartment complex by helicopters as families slept, deploying chemical agents near a public school, handcuffing a Chicago City Council member at a hospital. Activists, residents, and leaders say increasingly combative tactics used by federal immigration agents are sparking violence and fueling neighborhood tensions in the nation's third largest city. So again, there's a way to do this. This is not the way to do this. This is unbelievable. You're taking it's to me it's nuts. I mean,
the response from the city government is absolutely abysmal too, because the city government doesn't have a plan. They say that they're going to take care of the migrants and work with the activists, but then again, it's nothing but word salad. Brandon Johnson is declaring that some parts of the city will be off limits. Good luck enforcing it, because how are you going to do it? Because ICE has already showed that they were patrolling here in the city way back in February, earlier this year.
Yeah, well, so here's what J.B. Pritzker says. He says they are the ones that are making it a war zone. They fire tear gas and smoke grenades, and they make it look like it's a war zone. More than 1,000 immigrants have been arrested since an immigration crackdown started last month in the Chicago area. The Trump administration has also vowed to deploy National Guard troops in its agenda to boost deportations, but U.S. citizens, immigrants with legal status, and children have been among those detained in increasingly brazen and aggressive encounters, which pop up daily across the neighborhoods in the city of 2.7 million and its many suburbs. Activists and residents were taking stock Sunday at an apartment building in Chicago's South Side, where the Department of Homeland Security said 37 immigrants were arrested recently in an operation that's raised calls for investigation by Pritzker. So, while federal agents have mostly focused on immigrant-heavy and Latino enclaves, the operation early Tuesday, so I guess it was Tuesday, unfolded in the largely black South Shore neighborhood that had a small influx of migrants resettled in Chicago while seeking asylum. So that's what you were just talking about, how they sent these migrants into these already economically struggling neighborhoods of black people. Agents used unmarked trucks and a helicopter to surround the 5-story apartment building. News Nation, which was invited to observe the operation, reported agents repelled from Blackhawk helicopters. Agents then went door to door, woke up residents, and used zip ties to restrain them. Wow. You don't think this is to psychologically prepare us for when it's everyone else's turn, right?
It looks like the case. I mean, Trump wanted revenge with all the lawfare put on him. Chicago was the center of the DNC convention last year. I mean, we were all there.
Yeah.
And it was very clear to me at one point that Trump was very well going to likely get reelected on November 5th. 2 districts in this city turned red, which is a miracle in its own right. My family's been living here for generations. That's never happened. Of course, Trump was going to come here. Of course, Trump was going to want his revenge.
So residents and Illinois Coalition for Immigrants and Refugee Rights said that those who were zip-tied included children and U.S. citizens. So it's like everybody's for, I mean, most people, not everybody, but most people I think are for legal immigration and getting rid of illegal immigration. I think most people would be for that. But when you do it like this, now you're going to get people who are against you doing this. Roderick Johnson, a U.S. citizen briefly detained, said agents broke through his door and placed him in zip ties. I asked if they had a warrant, and I asked for a lawyer. He's 67-year-old guy. They never brought a warrant. I don't understand. I'm not a lawyer, but it seems like even if you're ICE, you need a warrant. No, I guess not. Dixon Romeo with Southside Together, an organization that's also been helping residents, said doors were knocked off the hinges. Everyone we talked to didn't feel safe. This is not normal. It's not okay. It's not right. Pritzker, a 2-term Democrat and a piece of garbage, directed state agencies to investigate claims that children were zip-tied and detained separately from their parents, saying military-style tactics shouldn't be used on children. Military-style tactics should not be used on anybody. How about that?
Outside of Gaza, of course.
Of course. Yeah. So guess who else thinks terrorists are children are terrorists? Guess who else does? That's right, the IDF and Benjamin Netanyahu. DHS officials said they were targeting connections to the Tren de Agua gang. What do you think about that, Kurt?
I think they brought them in the first place with all those NGOs so you could get upset that they're here.
Yep.
This is the dialectic I'm talking about. This little pageant they do. First of all, why would the state and the feds be fighting about enforcing a law that everybody that shouldn't even be a thing. They're doing it. The reason they're tying kids up is to piss off the other side and keep it going.
That's right.
You got to keep the scam going forever. So yeah, obviously there's just laws you would enforce. You would think you would have cooperation, but much like what they did with Roe v. Wade, these things are great touch points to get the fight going, and these people don't deliver for their constituents ever. Right. So they need this. They need you to be pissed because you saw that image, or you to be happy because you saw that image. And you're never supposed to get what you want. You're supposed to rejoice in the misfortune of the other side.
Mm-hmm. You know, just to add on to this too, before even the idea of sanctuary cities took place, you know, there were some images that I wish would still go viral, but in 2018, myself and Daniel, we covered at the Gary Chicago International Airport how nonviolent immigrants who were caught in Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin were brought to the Gary Chicago International Airport and were tied up and supposed to crawl on the stairs to the airplane so they would be deported out. Now, when we covered it, all those activists successfully, there was like 100 people who showed up. The buses did not deliver the migrants. Instead, they're going to Gary Chicago International Airport, and the buses were stopped. They were rerouted then to O'Hare Airport.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So
I could send you the old video. I have to look for it, but I could send it to you. It's very apropos to what we're witnessing now, because I have to wonder what's going to happen to a lot of these people who are being detained, who are at Broadville or going to any other facility that ICE is right now currently managing.
And so, of course, they say they're going after gangs and they're going after why do you have to use a Blackhawk helicopter, rappel into a residential building, and then bust down everybody's doors? A 67-year-old guy, you put him in zip ties? A U.S. resident? Obviously, that guy's not an immigrant. He was a black guy in his own building. So they're proud. Again, it's exactly what Kurt is saying. This is to make sure we keep a left-right battle going. And here's the stupid video that Kristi Noem tweeted out about it. Do you want to see this video they released? This is what they're
be weird.
This is what they're bragging about. This is what. So they're doing this in America. They're doing this to American residential apartment buildings, and they're bragging about it. Watch this. So they're turning. Now, Kit, you were in Iraq. It looks like they're pretending they're in Iraq they're fighting a military, and instead they're actually busting down doors, dressed up like they're in Iraq, but they're actually in Chicago. And
there's a couple. Sorry, go ahead.
And so what do you have to say about that when you see something? To me, that looks so ridiculous. Like they're trying to act like they're badasses, and they're not. But go ahead.
We gave this warning so long ago. I already said it earlier during this segment about, the questions we asked a lot of the people saying like, hey, can we take care of the migrants? Because another follow-up was, hey, what happens if Trump gets reelected? What happens if he returns? Because this is an opening salvo for him to come back, because there was no plan to take care of the migrants. We already have residents who are upset. You have City Hall up in arms. You have people yelling at the mayor. And a video like this, perception sadly drives reality, in which you have this video showing Mayor Brandon Johnson and Governor J.B. Pritzker by proxy being impotent and unable to stop this. Mayor Brandon Johnson is losing face because he's at 6.6% and losing the trust of the people. I mean, people want him gone. And then you have Governor J.B. Pritzker threatening to sue Trump. All in the while, this is still happening. The ICE raids are still going on. When I just got done wrapping up my show 2 days ago, there was a Walmart raid, and Benny Johnson was covering it with Chrissy Nome here in my city. So these things are happening, and it's a show of force, and it's to psychologically, one, make everyone afraid and get the other side upset with the images, just like Kurt said, of seeing people getting detained and tied up and then getting people to turn out to vote for the midterm election of 2026, not realizing that the Democrats could have avoided this years ago. The Republicans could have avoided this years ago. Like these politicians are just playing games with people and using them. There was never a real plan for any real stability. And so when you get propaganda videos like this, it's going to energize one side and infuriate the other side, thus leading to what we are seeing with the protest between ICE and the local sheriffs and police departments and the protesters. And it's going to continue to escalate, and it's not going to go ahead and end anytime soon, because on October 18th, there's going to be a No King's March protest or parade, however which way you want to call it.
Except for the King of England. We still like that royalty, but we just don't. Everybody, they're all idiots. Do you remember Laura Loomer, the beautiful Laura Loomer's tweet?
Hey,
you want Larry Ellison to spy on all these on the No Kings protest. You want it. So that's where it's all going. All that AI bullshit and all that, they're going to be watching you 24/7. This is all leading to that. And the thing of like, oh, you're getting the drugs in the gangs. I wish you hadn't brought the drugs in the gangs first and then did that. You're not really a hero if you brought all that shit in, which they did.
So here's what Chicago Sun-Times talks about these raids. Ebony Sweets Watson, who lives across the street, said it looked like hundreds of agents were outside her front door. Watson said she saw agents dragging residents, including kids, out of the building without any clothes on and into U-Haul vans. Kids were separated from their mothers, she said. It was heartbreaking to watch. Even if you're not a mother, seeing kids coming out buck naked and taken from their mothers, it was horrible. There's another one. Most of the neighbors were Venezuelan and often took turns cleaning. So Jones, who lives on the 4th floor, said most of his neighbors were Venezuelan and often took turns cleaning the hallway because the property owners did little to maintain it. They were cool people, Jones said as he looked into the next door neighbor's unit. They didn't speak a lick of English, but we used translator apps to talk to each other. Jones wondered what would happen to his neighbor's young children. Jones and Johnson said they believed that landlord would kick out the remaining residents from the building, which public records show had previously received code violations. So
I want to know who the landlord is, actually. Because these buildings that are being raided, why have they been lacking oversight? Who is observing them? Because on top of that, too, there was a shelter that was proposed to be built, and the residents didn't want it for 2 reasons. One, they weren't told about it, and 2, it was being built on a Superfund site. Who's in control of the property? It's the big question. Who's in control of that building?
So some of the people in Chicago are not on board. Well, here's what some of the people. Some of the people in Chicago are not against this, which, again, I think most people are for legal immigration and most people are for weeding out illegal immigrants. It's the way they're doing it. That's the big problem. And despite the rumors flying around about Black Americans being detained or deported in the South Shore Chicago ICE raid, that's simply not true. Well, we already heard from a 67-year-old guy who was zip-tied. Those targeted were immigrants in a building housing Venezuelan asylum seekers, not U.S. citizens. And so here's what a resident says, okay?
All right, so let me help you out with this one, okay? Since you don't get it. I literally live around the corner from where that happened at, okay? And not all black people were detained. It was just a couple of black folks in a building that nobody was supposed to be in. Yeah, they didn't tell you that narrative, that nobody was supposed to be in that building.
Have you heard that, Kit, that nobody was supposed? What does that mean? Nobody was supposed to be in that building?
Well, the building's operational, but technically it's not suitable for human habitation. And not to mention, there could be citations against the landlord. There could be other code violations. So the thing is, like, yes, there's buildings there. Should people be in them? No, yes.
It's a squat or they're renting it? Or it's
Well,
just
there is a
squad?
landlord.
Whatever you want, Kurt. The world's the choice is yours. Option A, B, C, and D. It's Chicago. There's no such thing as legit.
All right, let's let's listen to the rest of what this guy has to say.
Body. Also, that's a building full of clucks. You do know what clucks is, right? Also,
A cluck. Okay, he said it's a building full of clucks. Now, if you don't know what a cluck is a drug addict who doesn't have the money to support his habit. A cluck will often try to scrounge drugs or small amounts of money to buy drugs from anyone they know. And when they engage in this behavior that resembles chickens, that cluck, peck and scratch for any morsel of food they can find. So that's what a cluck is. A cluck is a drug addict who doesn't have the money to support his habit. Okay.
the Venezuelans went through that building and took over the whole building. Not forcefully, but they just started moving in apartments they ain't had no business moving into. Also, it's a lot of Venezuelans that look black. You know, like Cubans and Dominicans. There are some Venezuelans that look black. So guess what? If you didn't have your ID or no proof that you had residency there, then yes, they were detaining you. Because number one, you weren't supposed to be in the building. Number two, the landlord don't own the building no more. The bank owned that building. Number three, it was a gang of Venezuelans in all apartments that weren't even supposed to be in them apartments. So hell yeah, they detained everybody so they can sort it out and find out who is who. That's what happened. So once again, I'm still with deportation of the immigration, of the immigrants.
Well, here's one more black guy talking about what's happening in Chicago.
See, I'm pissed off.
That's Jamal Green.
People out there.
I'm sorry, say again?
That's Jamal Green. He ran for mayor of Chicago twice. He's an entrepreneur and activist, and he's been on my show. He has been one of the people that's been calling out Brandon Johnson from the beginning.
Okay, let's watch.
See, I'm pissed off because a lot of people out there are acting like they don't understand what is actually happening in the city of Chicago in regards to the ICE raids. Let me tell you something. Black people, again, are collateral damage in this. And all the black people that are getting mad at ICE and Donald Trump, hold on, you got to get mad at the politicians right here locally. Because it was the politicians right here in your city that decided to dump the migrant issue on the black community like they do every single time. When they came across the border and checked asylum, they were able to come over into our city and get incentives like medical care, 6 months free rent, free transportation, free child care. We fed them each and every day. And those people that they were giving assistance to, they didn't go up to the north side and to the white community. All of the people out there protesting that are white, they didn't open up their doors for them, and they didn't want none of the shelters on their neighborhood. Guess where they opened up the shelters? In the black community. Those same school buildings that they shut down in 2013 that were educating black kids, they took those school buildings and they made them migrant shelters. And then they gave over $700 million to a company out in Florida to manage those shelters. They took the buildings that you've been asking for to be developed and build new housing, and they made them into migrant homes, giving them 6 months of free rent. They dumped the problem on black community like they do every single time. When it was George Floyd riots, they closed downtown and pushed people to loot into the neighborhoods because they knew that people didn't care. Where was all the people right now? They weren't in our neighborhoods helping us open up back up our businesses. They were not in our neighborhoods helping us clean up. They weren't in our neighborhoods when we were fighting for Laquan McDonald, who was shot 16 times by Jason Van Dyke. I didn't see them at the protest. But now, right now, they want to make black people a part of the fight. When they made us collateral damage in the first place, we are always losing. That's why ICE is raiding buildings where black people are, is because they put them there. They pay for their rent. They pay for their food. They pay for their child care. They pay for everything, but they didn't put them where they live. They put them where black people live because they don't want to invest into the community. So that's the easiest place to dump a problem. So yes, we can say ICE is being aggressive. Yes, we know that our armed forces are always aggressive more to us. But what we can say is that our politicians did it to us. They should have never allowed them to come over here in droves like they did. And then when they did come over here, they should have never put them and dumped them in black communities, acting like we didn't want economic development, like we didn't deserve better schools and deserve community centers and deserve grocery stores. We deserve better. And our politicians need to act like it. Stop putting everything before us.
Wow. So that sounds like that guy might be mayor. They're not calling out ICE. They're calling out the government in Chicago, the mayor, and they're calling out the white protesters against ICE, right? So here's what Alderman Raymond Lopez says. 47 people shot this weekend in Chicago. No protests or calls for peace. No politicians or clergy demanding an end to the violence because they can't blame the president for it. Most Chicago leaders are hypocrites and grief peddlers. Nothing more, nothing less. And so that's when Jamal Green says, go look at those pastors. They're on the take. They're getting money to keep this migrant problem going. So you can have all your ire directed at ICE and Trump. That's easy. Yep. But number one, why doesn't the Chicago mayor work with ICE so he can avoid some of those problems? A. B, why did they turn it into a sanctuary city in the first place when they didn't have the money to take care of those people? C, why did they send them to poor black neighborhoods where they had just closed down their schools and then pay $700 million to put them in those schools that were empty? I mean, that is nuts. You're going to take $700 million and give it to a company from Florida to run a migrant shelter at an abandoned a school that they closed down in a poor black neighborhood instead of taking that $700 million and investing it in that community? That's mental. And of course, people are going to welcome ICE in those situations and turn on their politicians like they should. October 19th will be in Irvine, California. We'll be in Australia. Then we'll be in Burbank, California the day after Thanksgiving. And then Pottstown, Pennsylvania, December 6th. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. Hey, check out the story we covered about Putin and Xi discussing immortality through repeated organ transplants. Click the video on screen to watch.